incoming transmission.
Hello, this is Matt and McKinley from History Dispatches.
We are the father-son duo bringing you the weird, the wild, the wacky, and the craziest tales from across time.
From the Ice Bowl
to the Great Heathen Army.
And the head of Oliver Cromwell.
The same head they kept on a pike for 3 years?
Yep, all here on History Dispatches.
New episodes every weekday.
Find out more at historydispatches.com or wherever you get your podcast app.
Welcome to True Spies, the podcast that takes you deep inside the greatest secret missions of all time.
Suddenly out of the darkness appeared Bin Laden.
You'll meet the people who live life undercover. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position?
Vengeance felt good. Seeing these people pay for what they'd done felt righteous.
True Spies from Spyscape Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and thank you for listening to The History of World War II podcast, Episode 544, The Battle of Prokhorovka, Part 1. Last time, General Model's attack in the north had bogged down. He could not advance, but he could not pull back either. To do that would have invited the more numerous Soviet forces near him to counterattack. And who knew when or where the Ninth Army would be able to stop them. As for the southern attack of General Hoth's, that seemed bogged down as well. That is, until July 6th, when the SS Division Totenkopf on the far right smashed through the defenders in front of them and pushed on some 20 miles, gaining access to the Belgorod-Oboyan-Kursk Railway. Also that morning, while the Totenkopf was dashing ahead, the Der Führer Regiment of the Das Reich Division managed late in the morning to move ahead about 8 miles themselves and take a hill. The regiment's 1st and then 2nd battalions had tried independently to take this hill, but had failed. So they were put together, which is when they found success. Next, the town of Luchki, just over halfway to their target destination, fell to them. The left attacking force was now also advancing. From here, the plan was for the Totenkopf, again on the far right flank, to advance to the northeast for Prokhorovka. But in an attempt to stop or delay this latest German advance, the Russians threw in all the artillery and air attacks they could. Meanwhile, reinforcements were being brought forward. That evening, Vatutin spoke to Stalin and informed him of the estimated enemy losses of 332 tanks and 80 aircraft, which is probably exaggerated. As for the loss of enemy infantry, Vatutin's estimation again, after beating back some 12 Soviet attacks, was about 10,000 men. Stalin listened quietly to all this and then approved the moving up of the 27th Army. Of course, he reminded Vatutin that the plan was to bend to enemy pressure. Yes, but not to break, and then to counterattack. Stalin was in essence saying, I think we've bent enough. As for General Zhukov and the chief of the General Staff, Valievsky, they were directing the southern front and ordered the 2nd and 10th Tank Corps to come closer to Prokhorovka, and for the 5th Guards and for the 5th Guards tank armies to be put under Stavka control, should they need to react swiftly. This brought some resistance from General Konev, the commander of the reserves, to the east of Vatutin, for this force was all they had to eventually attack. But Stalin wanted it done, so it was done. The above tank formations received orders to move out, including General Romitstrov, commander of the 5th Guards Tank Army, who was quickly becoming a master of tank tactics. Late that same day, July 6th, Stalin phoned Romitstrov, and together they worked out that the tanks would move out under their own power versus being loaded onto a train to their new deployment location, and they would travel day and night but have aircraft overhead shielding them, hopefully, from the Luftwaffe. Thus, at 1:30 a.m., now July 7th, the 5th Guards Tank Army moved out. The plan, for now, was to have Romistrov's two tank corps, the 28th and 18th, make up the first echelon, with the 5th Mechanized Corps as the second echelon. And during their 200-mile journey, when the sun started to rise, fighters from the 2nd Air Army arrived. Everyone in the convoy breathed a little easier. For the Soviets, it was a good thing that their reinforcements were already moving out closer to the fighting, because on July 7th, the 48th Corps, representing the left flanking attack, finally broke through and pushed back the men of the 6th Guards Army. Meanwhile, the panzers of the Grossdeutschland and parts of the 11th Panzer Division turned to the northwest, making for Setstevo, to the west of Luchi. As this was the last line of Soviet defenses before Oboyan, Manstein's part of Operation Citadel seemed about to be accomplished. But before any celebrations could begin, the panzers ran into and were stopped by a determined artillery line, then a short-lived counterattack by the 3rd Mechanized and 6th Tank Corps. But more than Soviet defenses were beginning to plague the panzers. Near that day's end, it was reported that the Grossdeutschland Panzer Grenadiers had advanced another 5 miles to take the town of Verkhovny. Since this was done, a battle group of the Grossdeutschland and 11th Panzer were going to be put together to rush forward even more to the right of this to cover the captured town's immediate right flank. But as the sun went down, it was finally confirmed that Verkhovny was still to their north. They had not gone as far as they had thought. Chaos was beginning to settle on the rushing panzer units. Still, when the sun rose on July 7th, the Panzer Aces were at it again. Michael Wittmann led his force of Tigers towards Tetevino, about halfway between Belgorod and Prokhorovka. By the day's end, he could claim another 7 T-34s destroyed and 19 guns destroyed of the Soviet 29th Anti-Tank Artillery Brigade. And with the holes that Wittmann and others were creating, a motorcycle company of the Liebstandarte raced through it and captured an enemy brigade headquarters. The Soviets counterattacked again, and at one point, a lone Tiger tank of the 1st Panzer Regiment's 13th Company took on a gaggle of T-34s. 4 hours later, the Tiger was still intact. The just over 20 T-34s, not so much. Such moments convinced the Germans that Citadel was possible. And yet, with the Totenkopf Division on the right flank of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps relatively leading the way, the Liebstandarte and Das Reich of the Corps kept advancing as well. But something was off. They punched holes in the Soviet lines and drove through them, to be sure, but the rest of the Soviet line did not fall back like times past. So as the follow-up panzers drove through this hole, racing on ahead, they were hit, and some were lost by enfilade fire. Yet the good news for the Germans was that many of these Soviet reinforcements rushing in to help were heading to places the panzers had already passed by.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
But then something happened during the night of July 7th. Colonel General Masalenko, commander of the 40th Army, having been told where to head out that night, received updated orders. Now, he was to make for the beleaguered 6th Guards and 1st Tank Armies. If those two forces crumbled, then Vatutin's entire Voronezh front would truly collapse. The Southern Pincer would have succeeded. A whole other headache for Stalin and the Stavka. Meanwhile, to the right or east of the Panzer's penetration, Army Detachment Kempf was not advancing as far as 4th Panzer Army headquarters wanted or needed. The detachment just east of the Donets had done well, that is, until they ran into a wooded area near Gozlishkov, about 10 miles northeast of Belgorod. For among the trees was the Soviet 2nd Tank Corps, slapping at the nose of any German detachment units that tried to enter, which is when a gamble was taken by the Soviets. By this point, Kemp was spending most of his time having fighters and bombers fly over the wooded area, seeking out the enemy armor to destroy it, but the foliage was preventing this. This could take some time, is what the Russians concluded. So the T-34s there were ordered to head west, the idea being of hitting the 2nd SS Panzer Corps in the flank as they were driving north. So that morning of July 8th, 60 T-34s left the woods, heading west. With them was infantry and AA units. But before going too far, German HS-129B ground attack aircraft spotted them and shouted out a warning to Hoth, Corps Commander Hauser, to everyone. Responding, but one at a time, were 4 Staffeln of 16 aircraft each, and though one of these units was just out of training, their 30 tungsten core 30mm cannon shells penetrated the rear of the Soviet tanks, destroying 50 of the 60 that had been sent within 1 hour. Meanwhile, other German aircraft decimated Soviet infantry, which left the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, the attacking right flank, as well as the detachment Kempf, safe to continue on. From here, the Germans advanced, though at a cost, and helping them was everything from 6 disgruntled Russians translating captured radio traffic, which allowed a company of the SS Der Führer to rush ahead to capture a rifle brigade general, his staff and headquarters, to the Grossdeutschland's battle group surging ahead on the right flank, to then turn west to hit the enemy there that was looking south, waiting for the Panzer Grenadiers of the attacking left flank. What also helped was when Soviet formations on hills that did not fall quickly were bypassed by the panzers, but kept in check by German infantry and artillery. In this way, the Psel River was reached, located just northwest of Prokhorovka. Hoth's 4th Army had done it. On July 9th, the leading assault groups of the Liebstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf had fought to the last line of Soviet defenses. The day was filled with panzers mixing it up with Soviet machine gun nests, bunkers, and trenches, but German experience and coordination was winning the day. As the sun rose on July 10th, the Psel River, the last natural barrier before Kursk, was crossed. Even better, when Panzer Grenadiers caught up and crossed over as well with their bridging equipment, they captured the closest 4 towns, truly establishing themselves in the area. With the Panzer Grenadiers covering their northern flank, the panzer formations were free to move on. And as this was the most northern penetration of the southern pincer, part of the Totenkopf could now turn to the left and hit the Soviet 1st Tank Army in its rear, leaving the rest of the division, plus the Liebstandarte and Das Reich, to approach the city of Prokhorovka, quickening its fall. As this German right flank was going well, the 11th Panzer, the left thrust, was able to travel up the Belgorod-Oboyan road with the Grossdeutschland and 3rd Panzer armies covering their left flank. So by July 10th, the attack heading towards Oboyan was level with those of the Prokhorovka, thus only 12 miles from Oboyan. And if the Germans could take that city with all its roads and rails, the Soviet defensive structure here would fall apart. The German attack plan had always been to expect a massive counterattack from the east, near Provhorovka. Thus, the 3 SS Panzer divisions were sent here. This would allow the left flanking attack to be free to make for Oboyan. And though the Germans had suffered much to get where they were, the Soviets then made the rare mistake of overestimating German weakness. Thus, Operation Kuznetsov, the planned simultaneous counterattack on both German pincers, was scheduled for July 12th. As we have seen, July 10th was the day that the Psel was crossed. That was also the day that the SS Liebstandarte advanced towards Prokhorovka, which put the German positions relative to this target city, with the Totenkopf on the left of the Lieb, which was in the center, and the Das Reich on the far right. And thus, the next day, July 11th, the Liebstandarte in the center advanced, but they did not get much further, as they were checked by the 2nd Tank Corps, supported by the 9th Guards Airborne Division and the 301st Anti-Tank Artillery Regiment. On the German left, the Totenkopf was also stopped by the 31st Tank Corps, the 95th Guards Rifle Division, and the 11th Motorized Rifle Brigade. On the right, it was the same, with the 2nd Guards Tank Corps and the 183rd Rifle Division halting the Das Reich. As some of these units were from their reserve front, the Soviets here were truly gambling, but it could not be helped. Still, the relative good news for the Germans was that, on this day, the Liebstandarte had not only reached the 3rd defensive line of the enemy, but after a tough battle, had taken Hill 252.2, about 3 kilometers or just under 2 miles from the city's edge. To the left, the Totenkopf had not advanced quite as much and had been unable to close the gap between itself and the Liebstandarte. To the right, the Das Reich also advanced less than the center, thus the Liebstandarte was the tip of the spear, but also, in a way, isolated. The orders for the attack the next day, July 12th, were sent out by General Hauser that night of the 11th, as the Germans knew that to the southwest of the city there were many anti-tank guns protected by trenches, thus right in the path of the center attacking column, the Liebstandarte. For it to truly advance here would only cause them grief. Instead, Hauser ordered the center to make demonstrations to only tie down the enemy forces there. The Das Reich on the right would do the same, which left the Totenkopf with the most panzers to be the main attack. For the record, by this time, the Totenkopf had 122 panzers, the Liebstandarte 77, and the Das Reich 95. The Totenkopf would drive forward, take Hill 226.6, and then hit the city from the northwest, putting them in behind the main defending line. Once that force was disrupted, forcing the enemy to redistribute their forces, only then would the other 2 SS divisions advance proper. But taking this even further, once the city's defenses were compromised, the Das Reich on the right would then turn south and hit the enemy forces that were holding up the lead elements of Kempf detachment. With those additional forces coming north, anything Moscow threw at this area would be checked, allowing the left attacking forces to take Oboyan and then beyond.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Yet the Germans were not about to be allowed to set the tone for July 12th. For that day, Vatutin had ordered his armies to go on the offensive. Again, this was a part of the larger Operation Kuznetsov. And Vatutin's orders to Romitstrov were to destroy the enemy forces closest to Prokhorovka using the 5th Guards Tank Army, but also to not allow the German forces behind them to escape to the south. And Romitstrov had already figured out the first part of how he was going to do this. When battle came, Romitstrov ordered his T-34s to dash forward quickly, to quickly get in range with their own armaments. The Tiger tanks with their 88mm guns were to be respected and feared, but staying away from a Tiger tank only allowed it to fire on you with little chance of it being hit. No, the more maneuverable T-34 medium tanks were to close ranks quickly and then start the duel. Fortunately for the Soviets, the SS units coming at them had fewer Tigers than thought and no Ferdinand Jägerpanzer tank destroyers. Not one. Those were deployed with the Northern Pincer, which was bogged down. Yet the air battle would not favor the Soviets. Though two air armies, the 2nd and 17th, had been assigned to this area, most of their aircraft were already busy elsewhere, helping check the advances of Detachment Kempf and attacking the 48th Panzer Corps, making for Oboyan. Thus, only a fraction of these two air armies would be help with today's contest near Prokhorovka. Another German favor before this Battle of July 12th even started, the Kempf detachment had finally crossed the northern Donets and was once again advancing, now only 18 kilometers or 11 miles south of Provhorovka. If it continued coming north, then the left flank and rear of Vatutin's defending southern force, about to take on the Liebstandarte, would be exposed. Thus, Vatutin ordered Romitstrov to send reinforcements to those forces opposing the Kempf detachment. To the south, he sent the 26th Guards Tank Brigade, the 11th and 12th Guards Mechanized Brigades, and the 53rd Guards Tank Regiment, which totaled just over half of Romistrov's reserve forces. He could only hope the fighting of July 12th went his way. At 5:45 a.m. July 12th, the Soviet tanks roared to life, then moved to their assembly areas. The German panzers did the same, starting at 6:50 a.m., again thinking they would be the ones to start the attack. And indeed they were, by driving forward on their right flank to take the closest town, and in their center, the Obarazki State Farm. In reaction to this, the Soviets opened up with an artillery attack, starting at 8 a.m., which went on for 30 minutes. And at the end of that, Romitstrov radioed to everyone, "Stahl, Stahl, Stahl," or the word steel 3 times. The Soviet attack got underway. Soon, 500 tanks and self-propelled guns of the 5th Guards Tank Army were advancing. Hitting the Germans first would be 430 tanks and then 70 more. Coming right at the Liebstandarte were 3 tank corps with the men of the 9th Guards Airborne Division riding on their hulls. The day would not start out well for the men of the Liebstandarte. As they were meant to head out later that morning, they were not ready to be attacked. Still, needs must, so as the men got their equipment together, they started firing off purple flares, letting everyone around them know they were being attacked. Still, one commander of a panzer company managed to get his tanks back across the anti-tank ditch. Then they fanned out, ready to fire. As they were now on a slope of Hill 252.2, they watched as a fellow battalion was overrun on a height in front of them. That German unit had not reacted quickly enough. The commander who had made it across, his last name was Ribbentrop, later wrote, "About 150 to 200 meters in front of me appeared 15, then 30, then 40 tanks. Finally, there were too many of them to count." As these 3 Soviet tank brigades had taken the height of Hill 252.2, they now started coming down on the German side, which is when the tanks from both sides started firing. As the Soviet tanks were more worried about speed than accuracy, per their orders, that's what they got when they closed in on the panzers. And though it took 3 hours, the 1st SS Panzer Regiment was able to stop this local Soviet advance and then push back the survivors. The regiment reported destroying 62 Soviet tanks. An hour later, parts of 2 more Soviet tank brigades returned and settled for wiping out the reconnaissance battalion of the 1st SS Panzer Regiment. This allowed them to reach the Komsomolets State Farm. From here, not only was the next hill to the southwest, Hill 241.6, exposed, but also the lines of communication with the lead German units. It was a precarious moment for the Liebstandarte. Now these Soviet tanks moved on and engaged the 1st SS Regiment's artillery, and as they had attacked first, a few German artillery crews were quickly eliminated. But then the gun teams rallied and fired back with their usual efficiency and accuracy. Those Soviet tanks who had taken the fight to the enemy's guns were themselves wiped out. But the Battle of Prokhorovka was just getting started. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So we've started the great tank battle that is going on. We'll finish it off next time. And then by the time it's done, the war will look very differently for everybody involved and for the wider allies and Axis partners as well. So again, this is going to be the thing that breaks the German back. You could easily argue it's already been broken, but this is their last, desperate maneuver attempt, and this is not going to go well. So we'll see how it unfolds from here, and then we're going to stop and bring in the Americans and other Allied troops in North Africa. So anyways, so I would just like to take a moment to thank some people. Let's see here. The latest members who what I've been doing for, I think, the last 4 or 5 months has been doing one membership episode a week as opposed to the 2 a month, just trying to give more bang for their buck. Let's see here. John Garrett from Georgia, USA. Thank you very much, John. Brenda Sue Vogel from Wisconsin. Thank you, Brenda. Or BSV, as you're probably called by everybody who loves you. And then Philip is at Spiteri from Malta. Philip, hoping I didn't get that wrong because I love where you live and I hope to travel there one day. I'm just trying to get my kids to pay for it. Anyways, as far as donations, I would like to a hearty welcome, who will get an email from me later when I'm not so busy, Jeff Radigan, for his donation. So Jeff, thank you very much, and you will be hearing from me soon, and I hope you hear this and just know how appreciative I am. So again, we will wrap up this huge, massive tank battle, then we'll talk about where the Eastern Front sits kind of overall, and then we'll move to a different theater. So again, thank you for your patience, and do check out that the Medal of Honor episode, because it's pretty freaking cool. Anyways, so I wish I had that kind of production value, but I don't. It's just me and a microphone. But it's a pretty cool story. So I will see you later on this week with the second half of the battle. Take care, everyone.